Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 152. And we're going to be talking about Time Stand Still from Hold Your Fire. So, first things first, we have a panel of esteemed guests. We have Chris, we have myself, I don't know about Alex, we have Nick, and also a brand new panelist, Paul, joining us for the first time. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
He's very excited to be here, and we're excited to have him. And we're going to have a very wonderful conversation about this tune. And we all have different experiences with this album and this tour, and we've come into this particular experience from different points in relations to seeing them and seeing this tour live. I saw the tour, this particular one, 3 times. It was fantastic. All of the songs are so vivid in my memory of seeing them perform them, brand new, and I'll never forget that. And I'm trying to think what else I can say about it. That's pretty much a nice brief little introduction to the tune. So without further ado, let's actually jump right into the first lyric. And I'm going to read off a bit of it for you. I turn my back to the wind to catch my breath before I start off again, driven on without a moment to spend, to pass an evening with a drink and a friend. I let my skin get too thin. I like to pause, no matter what I pretend. Like some pilgrim who learns to transcend, learns to live as if each step was the end. So, having read that, I guess we can begin with Alex on this one. What say you about this part?
Well, one of the things I was thinking of and actually that kind of drew me to want to talk about this section was that the first line, I turn my back to the wind. To me, it seems like it's another, I'd say overt theme, but I never noticed it till we really started talking about, till I joined, this discussion kind of group, because Neil would end, or I assume Neil, in this case, it's the prose. So we have to assume it's him. But the idea that at the end of Force 10, rising and falling at Force 10, we twist the world and ride the wind. So that's the final lyric in Force 10. And then the first line in the next song is I turn my back to the wind. So it's another one of those things where, 1987, years previous, they eschewed the whole idea of progressive rock, but still have the themes that would weave things together. So it's just, so in that respect, with that line, I turn my back to the wind, catch my breath before I start off again. I mean, you can certainly, you can envision movie scenes, TV shows where people literally were in that situation where they might have physically turned and kind of, with the idea of, all right, now I got to do this thing. And certainly, in some cases, I feel like, the title itself could be pretty self-explanatory, but we get into what he's reading or writing and, reading just the simple fact that, hi, we're in a band that's touring. We're spent the 70s on tour. We, Lifeson had some kids who were growing up. Geddy began forming the family at the end of the 70s. I mean, you look at other artists like Peter Gabriel. I mean, he left Genesis because he had the daughter and the family issues. So, I mean, it's a considerable pull, obviously. So in that respect, just the notion of I turn my back to the wind, catch my breath before I start off again, with the aspect of, all right, tour. And as Neil had said in the documentaries, he didn't like to tour. And then at that point, the second half of that, driven on without a moment to spend, I mean, that certainly does paint the picture of, wow, we have these friends and they have these lives and we have these lives, and the wives and girlfriends are at home with these lives, yet we're out in, Dubuque or in Austin, as it was just a little ways from Toronto. The second half of that first stanza, I let my skin get too thin, down to learn to live as if every step was the end. I mean, that's something that various people in different, I'd say, careers, not just rock stars, but various people would sort of reach a point where it does set the stage of, well, can I literally say, and look at all the philosophies, all the religions built on some of this. So here I am in the now, this is where I am. Learn, to live as if every step was the end. Well, what's happening next? Well, it's over there. Here I am. And certainly Neil has said, not that I want to like steal any more from this, but just the idea of that was a focal point for him. I want to be in the now. I don't want to spend too much time in nostalgia. Maybe a little critical reflection is not a bad thing, but nostalgia, no. So as I say, I don't want to steal too much of this this discussion as we move into the chorus. So I think I'll just turn it over at this point now that I dominated the intro verse.
Well, it's funny because the wind theme is something he returns back to, and it's been said on the roundtables that Neil has this sort of writing style that themes come back and they return in different ways because he learns more about certain things and he experiences different things. So I think it's really interesting that it's actually back to back on one record. I mean, to certain albums like The Way the Wind Blows on Snakes and Arrows, where that's just like a separate tune, but it's within a collective of themes. But just the fact that it's on the same album, like you mentioned, Alex, they have the wind of Force 10, this push, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm going to resist the wind. I'm going to be present. And I think it's a really important point that that you mentioned, that he's okay. We have all these things. We're going to put the back to the wind. We're going to be here, and we're not going to be moved. We're just going to be as present as possible. I think it's just it definitely
the great that you picked. I never picked up on that. And I've noticed those things, the way he's used that kind of technique in other songs, whether it's, the idea of constant change, or he talks about it in Tom Sawyer, the digital man, constant change is here to stay. And then New World Man, constant change is here today, things like that. We have the free will, and then entre nous, some we would not choose, but we're not always free, So yeah, very cool that he came back to that.
Well, I mean, sorry. I mean, Nick, were you about to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's interesting. We're talking about like reflections, but also I think he's kind of describing about like what he wishes he could do. And he's kind of predicting what his future is going to be, because I read the line, driven on without a moment to spend, to pass an evening with a drink and a friend. Every tour starting in like the mid 90s, what did he do on tour? He was riding his motorcycle from concert to concert, had a buddy with him. They'd have an evening. And you read his books, what was he always doing when they would go to the hotel? They always had a bottle of like 20-year Macallans, right. So it's funny because as much as this is a reflection, he's also saying what he wishes he could do. And I think that accomplishing a lot of what he wished he could do with these tours to make them more enjoyable are why the band was able to keep touring and to keep him on tour for as long as they did.
Yeah.
And it's also about one thing. I was going to mention this later, but I can do it now. This song has come to mean more and more and more and more to me the older I get. I mean, I was 19 when I first heard this song, and I thought it was poignant then, So I think that part of it is getting older and people spread out, whether it's friends or family, and you get spread more thin, whether you're a rock star touring around the country or you're just somebody who's got a really busy job, whatever it is. And it's hard to make time for all of these other things in your life that, you either took for granted or you just wish you had more of,
That's go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that's the thing, is that, for the majority of us that might have been in high school when this album came out, it might have been a little harder to kind of appreciate some of the lyrics, with like Second Nature, Open Secrets, this one, maybe even because at that point they were in their mid-30s, entering their mid-30s, and they'd already been living a certain intensity of life. And so if you're a teenager sitting in some bedroom with a new record, it's sort of, yes, it's cool, but it isn't rocking like those albums. It's like you're reaching for your Iron Maiden or something, like, well, this rock's a little heavier and I'm 17.
That's exactly how I got into them. This, matter of fact, Show of Hands was my first album where I said, I need to listen to this. A friend of mine played it for me. I said, this is it. The lyrics are what drew me in the first place. And I dug back. And like you said, Neil was lyric wise. He's in his early to mid 30s, 34ish or so when he wrote this. It showed an amazing amount of insight and forethought to realize, and I don't want to get into the later lyrics, but when you look at the lyrics as a whole, it's yes, this is life is the journey, not the destination. So as you're going through this, it's already been said as far as the first verse goes, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that, but it's almost like advice, which I'll get into in one of the choruses, but he's already recognizing that, and he's going to say, this is why you should do this, and this is how you should do this, but I'll hold off till we get there.
Yeah. Yes, good. And good segue into the chorus. Here is the chorus. Time stands still. I'm not looking back, but I want to look around me now. Time stands still. See more of the people and the places that surround me now. So that's leading into the next bit, which you can also include. I think, Paul, you want to say a few things about it. Freeze this moment a little bit longer. Make each sensation a little bit stronger. Experience slips away. Experience slips away. So yes, I guess we can all kind of jump in on the chorus here and there. But Paul, did you want to mention the part right after?
Yeah. Well, again, going with not looking back, but in other words, don't dwell on the past, observe it. But I want to look around me now, see more of the people and the places that surround me now in this moment. So how do you do this? Freeze this moment a little bit longer, make each sensation a little bit stronger. Why are we both having problems with that lyric? That's the how. And then it almost seems as if, okay, here's the how, and now here's the why. Because experience slips away. So this is why I'm telling you, you're going to lose this. If you don't realize the moment you're in, it's going to become the past, and you've missed the experience. It's not always going to be here. So that's how I took it.
You guys are making me wonder if that's why Getty sang those lines the way he did. If he read "make each sensation a little bit stronger" or things like that and thought, all right, I got to stretch this out. Probably say it rhythmically, and it's like, oh, okay, that's easier.
Yeah, it's interesting too that the masculine feminine interplay in this section, with Aimee singing "Time Stands Still." It's almost like a motherly voice, like the soothing voice, like, time stands still. And then, it's like almost like like a mother and child relationship, but kind of like that, I guess, in some respects. I don't know if something resonates with you in terms of that correlation.
And it's been said before, when lyrics are repeated, they are important when it comes to Rush's lyrics. And I didn't do an exact count, but I know that freeze this moment a little bit longer, experience slips away, time stands still. It's so stressed and so repeated that it almost felt when Aimee Mann's voice comes in, okay, I've already said as much as I can say, now listen to this. And then that's when her vocal starts. It's like that accentuate. So.
Excellent. Very cool. And it's funny, I mentioned that point about, Neil repeating certain things. And I kind of borrowed that from Donna Halper, because I've seen her on the deep dives. I'm like, that is such an important point that it just stuck with me. I was like, if I get to do a host kind of thing, I have to make a mention of it and give her props, because it's just brilliant. And on to the next bit of brilliance, the next verse. I turn my face to the sun, close my eyes, let my defenses down, all those wounds that I can't get unwound. I let my past go too fast, no time to pause. If I could slow it all down, like some captain whose ship runs aground, I can wait until the tide comes around. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I guess the face to the sun part, I always envision like, being on stage and you have the lights, but also too, he had, he was doing traveling on motorcycle and I think bicycle before that, then he led into motorcycles later. So I think it's when you're out and you're on a bike, whether it's a motorcycle or a bicycle, you're basically on a two-wheeled piece of transportation. So you don't have anything around you.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be on defense, but then also, have some defenses, down a little bit to let in more experience. I think the idea of wounds relates to that a little bit, perhaps, of experiences that they kind of stick with you and you can't undo those. So you have to learn to live with those, but also not close yourself off too much from experience or a moment or an adventure or whatever. and not let things go by too quickly, and not, sort of, again, it's the reiteration of the first parts of not letting things pass by and not being observant of those moments that are coming through and being attentive to those. Like the phrase I learned years ago was "be here now." And this whole entire song just reminds me of that slogan. So that's my little contribution to this part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the I turn my face to the sun, close my eyes. I mean, you figure that's also another physical manifestation from the first verse to this, as far as, basically, exactly. Just at that point in the beginning, back to the wind. Now it's okay. We're doing this. And in some ways, it's also a continuation from Limelight as far as letting my defenses down, because obviously, as a traveling celebrity, there's that need to have an incredible sense of boundaries with all the freakazoids that come out of the woodwork. Not to be negative towards the freakazoids who might watch this.
I'll hit on this after we get through the lyrics, but there are so many allusions to past songs with this song, both lyrically and musically. And it's interesting because I think a lot of those allusions come from the fact that, at this point in time, when he says, if I could slow it all down like some captain whose ships runs aground, I can wait until the tide comes around. He's talking about touring. Neil, we've talked about this before. Neil really didn't like touring. That really wasn't his thing. But in the 70s, they were doing like 200 shows a year. And, now come the 80s, they were still doing a lot, but they were starting to do a lot more. I think they were averaging about 40 a year, with like 2 legs of like the same tour. So they get like 80 shows in, maybe 15 of them are overseas. And I think the 80s is even, but even the 80s, they were traveling a lot. I mean, the early to mid 80s, they were traveling a lot. I think 85 is when they did the 2 Japanese shows over in Tokyo. I don't remember exactly, but they did their only 2 shows they've ever played in Japan. So, I think that when you read into that line, you have to understand that he's talking about the fact that they're at a point in their career where we don't need to tour all the time. We don't need to do 200 shows a year. This is tiring, and everything's just flying by. I mean, Hold Your Fire was what, their 10th album? I don't remember off the top of my head. Was it? No. 12th album. Yeah, 12th album.
Yeah.
Everybody looks around.
Right.
12th album. Yeah, I mean, 12 albums.
I think it was 15th, but that's counting archives, the live albums, etc. So
yeah, so
actual studio.
So 12th studio album in 14 years. 13, 14 years. That's a That's a lot. So
a lot of experience flying by even at that point. And again, like you said, mid-30s, and you already have this much. It's going to feel that breakneck fast. It's like, stop, like you said, be here now. Appreciate this moment, because there's just going to be a whole lot more, and I don't want to miss it.
Yeah, it's hard to do sometimes,
And the funny thing is that we all thought they were getting old at this point. They were getting into their mid-30s.
I know, it's sort of back then, and then now it's sort of mid-30s. That's so cute.
It's funny too to think about how 2 things I think of is they had a whole band's catalog worth of albums after this album. They had a whole band's worth. And that kind of brings me around to one little thing I think Chris, was you had mentioned, or no, it was you, Alex, who had mentioned how he goes back to songs. Well, there's a line here where he returns to in a later album when he's talking about whose ships run aground. That's a prominent thing that happens in the Clockwork Angel story.
Oh, in the records.
Remember. Yeah. So he returns once again. He returns once again to a past lyric. Just fascinating how you can see all these connections over time.
That's how I always drew a connection between this and Marathon, just one album behind it. Marathon, like I said, the allegory being life measured by distance. This is Time Stands Still is life measured by time.
Yeah.
So these same themes, but constantly either reinventing them or redefining them, or better art, not better, but Neil always had the philosophy of improving oneself every single day. So improving upon an original thought he had before when writing lyrics, or they're musically, we could go for hours on that alone, but the evolution of the sound per album. So seeing all these tie-ins, like you said, it never stops fascinating me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course the chorus comes back the same way, I guess. Yeah, it's really the same type of deal. And then Freeze This Moment comes back again. And then I think when it comes back again, it's treated a little bit differently. Because now we're leading into this instrumental break, which in a tune like this, which I guess could be considered like maybe a pop song because it was like the single off the record. That the instrumental breaks in odd time. I think even the very beginning opening of Alex playing that guitar part was in 7/4, I think. But this little break is in 7/4, which is interesting. And there's no guitar solo. There is some vocal layering in there. I don't know if it was Geddy or Aimee, but it sounds like it was Aimee doing the vocalizations.
Yeah.
Might as well. She was there.
Yeah,
it was her. But it's funny because like there is no like actual guitar solo, but this sort of instrumental break is such a good emotional buildup, like live in concert.
Yeah.
That even though there's really nothing, it's not like it's a Limelight solo where he's going all over the place and it's got this really like crying guitar sound. This is just a basic. He's just playing the same thing kind of over and over, but there's a buildup with all the other layered sounds and stuff. And
that's exactly what I was
slowly building, and it kind of crescendos at the end, and live in concert's a really big pump up moment for the song. So
yeah.
Even Neil's last fill right before the vocals come back in is so fast. It's just like
we haven't mentioned the fact that Neil's, once again, he's subtly got some really like fun little things he does with his drums in the background in this song.
Those little effects that sound like clocks.
He was really starting to explore into the electronics back then, and the foot triggers and things like that.
Sampling became a little more possible.
Yeah.
I just watched
live.
Yeah.
I just watched that Taking Center Stage version of Time Stands Still before this, and I, like you said, I was absolutely blown away by how many little fills, little accents that added to it. And then, as we mentioned, as far as the layering up goes, by then it's not all him. All three of them are adding parts, and the layers are just getting thicker and thicker and faster into the next. Summer's going fast.
Yeah.
Of course, the note choice in the instrumental interlude is basically the primary layout of that is B, D sharp, and E. So I mean, you have that tension of the D sharp and the E right there. Because I mean, the song's basically an E major, but much like Limelight and some of the others, it's really more of a B mixolydian. So in that respect, he's hitting on, as they say, I mean, the B to the D sharp is B major, but the E to the D sharp is a major seventh. So, and that's that little bit of tension in that. So it's kind of, it's poppy, but it's not too poppy.
It's an Alex chord. That's what my friends and I used to call it.
Yeah.
Although in all fairness, that's a chord that also appeared in Don't Tell Me You Love Me in the riff, Panama, and Round and Round.
Gotcha.
So it was an 80s chord.
But what's interesting though is that I listen to this song and I know that a lot of people call it like it's kind of got a bit of a pop edge to it. If you take away all like the effects and you take away Aimee Mann and just have that be a basic, Alex like on Subdivisions, whatever, and it's just guitar, drum, bass, this song could very well fit in with their early albums. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's very much like that opening, the opening guitar riff is very like, it's just Alex playing, it's just an Alex intro with some drums then coming in. And like, if you take away all that stuff, they never played this live without the effects, but I would have loved to have heard the song just boil down to the three of them on their instruments.
Distortion on the guitars. All right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and just, it would fit in. I could hear
almost like the intro to Limelight a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that I realized that when because I find myself not just going over lyrics, but learning these songs, on relearning or remembering them on the guitar and getting ready for these talks. And it's like, oh, this is Limelight, but it's Limelight with a C sharp minor before the A, and then the two A susses to stretch it into a 7/4 instead of a 6/4. So it's kind of like, which, I mean, he's done that in other cases. I mean, like the one that it's not going to pop into my head on Roll the Bones and Ghost of a Chance. Okay, it did pop into my head. And, so he hits on B a lot. Part of the pre-chorus and Free Will, or, as I say, E and some of these majors like that seem to work with Geddy's voice. I mean, The Big Money was basically B major, just tuned up. So, I mean, it's a style, it's his style. But yeah, at that point I thought, oh, this is Limelight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to kind of wrap up the instrumental part before we get on to the rest of the lyrics, like, to dumb it down for everybody, Limelight, the intro, he goes up, and in this song he goes down, pretty much. It's same thing, just different direction.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Funny.
So Alex continues to be underrated.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he always gets the right part at the right moment for the right song, for sure. And then now to the last bit of the song. Summer's going fast, nights growing colder, children growing up, old friends growing older. Freeze this moment a little bit longer, make each sensation a little bit stronger. Experience slips away, the innocence slips away. So that treatment of the chorus is, well, actually it's the verse, I'm sorry, but it's, I think, again, no accident with the repetition of the verbiage here. So anybody have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, this song, this album, this verse, it means so much to me and to my two best friends, who I've been, friends with since grade school. And when this album came out, we were all working. It was the summer before my sophomore year in college. And we all worked together at this 7-Eleven on Long Island. And we listened to the album premiere at work. We had a little boom box with a cassette in there, so we could run over and record and get the whole thing. And we're like trying to take care of customers, but we're like freaking out at the guitar solo in Lock and Key or something. We're like, holy shit, did you hear that? And this song, just that line's children growing up, old friends growing older. And when I said kind of ironically before about how this song means more as I get older, and how it was poignant then to these guys who had been my best friends for, like really since the 7th grade, when the three of us became friends, and we all became Rush fans together. We saw our first show together. We saw our last show together. And every time we listened to that song, when that line came up, we'd turn and high five each other. We're driving in the car, high five each other. We're at the concert, high five each other. And to this day, I can't listen to that song, even though one friend lives in Iowa, the other one's in Japan, without I'll just nod this way, nod that way. I've got a drink, I'll toast this way, toast that way, at that part in the song. And actually, when my friend Jamie got married in the summer of 1997, we made the DJ play this song at the end of the reception, and the three of us were alone out on the dance floor dancing our faces off to it. It was it was awesome. And so it's cool. What you were saying before of the drum fill that leads into that, it's such an emotional buildup, and then just I view this and Power Windows, this period, as like Geddy's peak of his voice, his knack of vocal melody writing and all that stuff. And
Oh, Chris froze.
Now that's some suspense.
Just a little bit longer.
That's
Time
some
stands
spec-
still.
Yeah, time literally stood still for him. That's fantastic.
So apropos.
Well, I'll cut in then and say that
Mhm.
when I look at these lyrics,
Oh,
so
he's
I
back.
wasn't. Oh, Chris is back. Hey.
Time
Did I
stood still
freeze?
for you.
Oh,
You froze that for a
your
little bit
time
longer.
stood still for quite a bit for you.
oh shoot,
You're good.
I see what you did there.
We caught at the end of the wedding.
Yes. High fiving on the floor.
Is the guy still married?
What was that?
Just making sure.
Yes, I think.
Well, I was just gonna cut in here and say that it's funny because I think I'm pretty accurate in saying, unlike the rest of you, I wasn't around for when this song came out originally. But I think back to, you know, how I lived the 80s, which is through, you know, movies and television and stuff from that period. And I think back to a lot of those like family flicks from the 80s. And I read these lines in here coupled with the music. And I think this song could fit right in with like one of those like John Hughes films, you know, like one of those like, I mean, like,
Which were very important in our exactly.
yeah. I mean, this is very much a more accurate, you know, this is a more appropriate song, I think, to what the suburban youth of the 80s growing up would, you know, would sound, feel, be like, as opposed to, you know, the stereotypical glam metal of the late 80s. So I really, like I said, I wasn't around for that. You know, I was around for 1 month of the 80s. And I don't have
a lot of good
memory of
insight in
that.
that for someone who wasn't around for that.
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah. And I just,
Exactly what I would say.
Yeah,
Lived
yeah.
in there.
Well, this album in Power Windows, I mean, this was kind of their pop phase, you know, that was like kind of their, you know, I've said this before in the show about how I felt that Rush throughout their career have done their own version of whatever is going on around them. And this is their keyboard 80s pop influenced Rush music, you know.
Glam metal in the 80s was the music. Like that was, I mean, there were pop stars who were bigger than most of the glam bands, but the reality is like that was like the thing. So
for the people, I have to say this, I'm sorry to interrupt, but for the people who say that they don't like the keyboards and everything and that it's too poppy, I'm glad they aired on the side of the pop than on the fucking bullshit glam metal that was going on, because if they did their version of that would suck.
And while I listened to that,
Eddie's hair was a little big on Power Windows, but
Yeah.
you know,
Raccoon was going by then.
They got close to the
That is what
kimonos. When they wore the kimonos, that was getting close, but
that's the
Yeah.
thing, like they went with rock throughout their career. It wasn't
Yeah.
just like what I
Yeah,
mean, you look
rock
at
band.
rock, you look at what happened after the 80s when they went into the 90s, they got away from the popular side and got back to more of that stripped down sound, Counterparts, Test for Echo, you know?
right.
And yet this sound and this material still remains poignant, because the one thing, just to throw in one of my last thoughts, was the fact that when I got the phone call, not to turn it melancholy, but when I got the phone call on January 10th, when we found out of 2020, when Neil had passed, I locked up, I froze, but not for the same reason. If I wanted to remember this, it was shock and all that. But the very first music line that popped into my head, probably 2 minutes later, when I started gathering my thoughts and started feeling emotional about the whole thing, was "The innocence slips away." That was the line that hit me. It's like, okay, life just took a turn. Things just changed. So as we've talked a lot about how, you know, freeze this moment so I can experience it or enjoy it. Not always, but it definitely, that's always going to be the line for me. People have brought up After Image and The Garden. I totally see both of those being fantastic songs to be able to channel those feelings through. But that line, "The innocence slips away" as the song fades out, is how I'm always going to hear that.
Yeah.
And they end the song too.
Yep.
They don't. It's not a fade out at the end.
Right, a fade, not a fade out. Pardon me.
But
Exactly.
no, I'm just saying, like, I
Yes.
appreciate them
Excellent.
actually ending the song as opposed to the. I've never been a fan of the fade outs.
And I think it's the same chord at the end too as the beginning.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
nice bookend, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting in thinking about The Innocent Slips Away, and not that I want to divert too long, especially since we're past our 30-minute mark. But you know, I just think about if we look at 1994 when Kurt Cobain died, and people, oh, Gen X, it's to John Lennon, and a lot of us then were probably thinking, really, you know, 1994. I'd say more at this point after living a longer bit of time. 2020 especially, because you had the list of celebrities who began dying at the end of 15 with Lemmy, and then Bowie and Prince and whatnot. But I think 2020, beginning with Neil dying, which is obviously, I'm sure for most people watching this, was a big punch in the face. And then we keep going around, even by the time we get into autumn after dealing with spring and summer. Eddie Van Halen, Jeremy Bullock, who was the original Boba Fett. It's just kind of like, if you're a Gen X dude, it's kind of like, what? Wait, what? Hold on. At that point, I'd say The Innocent Slips Away, because it's like, well, you're about 50. Yeah, but these guys, can't we hold on to them longer? Like when Harrison Ford was in his plane accident, it's just like, oh, please, thank you. It's just, just some of these icons of the 70s and 80s where it's just, beginning, especially as I say, beginning, like, Paul was saying, beginning with Neil there at that point, it was just such a hit.
Yeah, and just the idea and the theme of life in the song, like we didn't really sort of associate, passings or death. It's such a joyous tune, so
right,
and it became a tribute tune, ironically,
Yeah.
I'm gonna see my friend Jim, the one who lives in Japan. His father just passed away, and so he's coming. I think he's flying in tonight. He was just here a couple of weeks, or last month. And I saw his dad. Like the three of us, when we were kids, we all called his dad, and stuff. So this song is one of the first things that I thought of. In fact, I was trying, ages ago when I signed up to do this roundtable. I kind of penciled in my friend Jim's name. I was like, I'm gonna try and see if he can join us from Japan, because I would love to have, another part of that trio into this discussion.
So cool.
Memories.
Very
cool.
Frozen in time.
But that's yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and we also get, to segue into another part of this, we also can't go on without talking about the music video. The wonderful
Alex has it right there.
Yeah, the wonderful goofy music video was directed by Polish filmmaker. Oh, I'm gonna butcher this.
It's a hard name.
Do it up.
Zbigniew Rybczynski.
I'm not even gonna try.
Oh, let me try again. Zbigniew Rybczynski.
Z-Big.
Oh, with that guy.
Just go with Z-Big.
That guy, yeah. And it was the video was edited by Glenn Lazaro. They shot a bunch of footage of landscapes first, and I'm just paraphrasing what all the stuff's saying, but they shot a bunch of landscapes first, and then after that, they the idea was that they were gonna have Rush playing all these different landscapes and everything. But then Z-Big decided he loved the stage, and he was like, I want to just have Rush on the stage, and instead I'm gonna have him fly all over that. And so then they had everything live on top of each thing all at once at the same time, moving around. And they were using, giant green screen and all that. And they had a big studio. Aimee Mann, they videotaped her. She was in it, obviously. If you've seen the video, she's right there with the camera behind Alex. And it's fascinating because, to me, like, I look at the technology of, today and what, what I could do right now on a computer with like Photoshop or something. I could do all kinds of cool stuff with Rush artwork. I mean, you see it all the time on fan pages. But 1987, this video was actually pretty impressive. It's a little, of its time now, we'll say. But back then it was I mean, impressive for what they could do with back then with, I'm sure, the budget they had. Now, if another fun fact, speaking of Aimee Mann, they paid her $2,000 and never had her ever sing it live with them. And she wasn't the first. Can you guys guess who the first person was that they wanted to approach?
Yeah, Cyndi Lauper.
Cyndi Lauper.
There was actually
Cyndi
two.
Lauper.
And
All right.
Chrissy
then
Hind
Chrissy
also. Mhm.
Chrissy Hind, yep. And Chrissy Hind was the one that Alex actually really wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quote, we thought she'd be perfect, but she was unavailable. So then they recruited Mann. I don't know what Aimee Mann was from at the time. Oh, Till Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
Till Tuesday.
I'll be honest with you guys now. I don't go Till Tuesday. I'm sorry, guys.
That's the only one I can think of.
Yeah,
Harry-
Voices Carry is the go-to song.
Is the hit, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
And their
check that
second
out
album,
after-
Welcome Home had just come out.
Mhm.
I'm gonna check this out when we get off here. I'm gonna have to listen to
Yeah.
What was it
Voices
called?
Carry. Yeah, great.
Voices Carry.
Very
Okay,
good
Carrie.
stuff.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
check that out. So yeah,
Nice
I always
bass lines
thought
too.
I always thought it's fun to think about. Like I always thought, who else could have sang, this song back then? And I always thought Roxette.
They weren't really
you know,
known at the time.
Yeah, person, she sang "Listen to Your Heart." I always
Mhm.
thought it's a good song. I don't know, I like the song. I always thought she would have sounded really good too.
Or
singing
Kate
that
Bush.
part. Yep. Yeah, but God, could you imagine if she was on this song
Oh
today?
my
like,
gosh.
now
Thinking
with
of, thinking of the notes from like this woman's work or whatever, but singing "Time Stand Still." Chills.
Yeah, I mean, with her sudden resurgence, this song might have had a sudden resurgence, and all of a sudden it's all over like pop culture and stuff. And but of course, Neil unfortunately wouldn't have been around to,
Yeah.
get his work appreciated. So that would have been
Mm.
that sucked. But
And good thing
Very-
they didn't go too far with like Ann Wilson or something. Somebody could really belt it out.
Oh, yeah.
And completely overpower the song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another great topic for the roundtable,
Yeah.
yeah,
Who else would we want to see singing this? Chrissy Hines seems like she would have a little too bluesy of a voice, in my opinion, for this. I mean, at that point, you just sort of say, just it was meant to be. Aimee Mann's voice was perfect. Her delivery was perfect. I mean, Cyndi Lauper, you could kind of hear its similar tonality, but yeah.
I could have heard the Manic Monday girl could have maybe have done
Susanna
it.
Hoffs from the Bangles.
Oh, right.
That yeah. Sorry, my 80s. I apologize, guys. Like I said, I wasn't there, so you
Yeah.
know.
You
I'm
got
trying
to-
enough that generation.
I had
Yeah,
such
we're
a
good.
crush on her. Oh my God. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we could wrap with maybe a quick mention of favorite live versions of this song or version.
Yeah.
My first show with them was Presto. Like I said, Showing Hands got me into them, so I missed that tour. But Presto, Roll the Bones, Counterparts. Every time I saw that clock come up on that screen, I'm like, time stand still. And then trying to go in order, I'm sure I'm gonna miss one on accident. But when I saw Vapor Trails twice and No Time Stand Still, I was like, okay, I love what they're playing, but where's Time Stand Still? I'm so used to it being in the set. Any of those, just from memory.
How about you, Nick?
I mean, so the one I always listen to is from Show of Hands. I love that version. There's actually some really good, bootleg versions though out there. But for me, it's got to be the Time Machine tour because I actually saw it. I was fortunate enough to have actually gotten to have seen that song. There's so many good songs from, Hold Your Fire, and really a lot of those like late 80s albums and early 90s albums that I didn't get to hear because they just didn't play them after they were one tour, two tour songs, then maybe they'd bring back one. So for me, it's got to be Geddy's voice on that song. He had a little struggle and, a little struggle, but they played a little slower too. But it's still just to get to see it live.
Definitely.
I would say probably the Hold Your Fire tour for me. First time that I saw it live, and because every tour I was always most excited to hear the new stuff, so it was always great to hear that. So yeah, but this was always a treat to hear live, for those reasons I talked about before, with my buddies.
Absolutely. Alex?
I go with the Counterparts tour, and as I said about, I think, Mystic Rhythms, you can find the video from the it was in April, or was it in March? I can't remember. I saw them in April of '94.
Auburn
Molesky?
Hills or
Yeah,
Video?
Auburn Hills.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
there are a lot of
Oh,
those clips
yeah, yeah.
online. I mean,
Yep.
phenomenal version of Cold Fire, but the Double
War
Agent,
Paint.
but Time Stands Still in that version, definitely.
yeah. I used to have a bootleg of one of the shows at the Garden on the Counterparts tour.
It was a great tour.
Little VHS tape, but I got rid of them all, and
Yeah,
I'm
I
pissed
too-
because now I have a thing where I can convert it to a DVD
Yeah, same here.
and then burn it, but they're gone.
I just want to say, with wrapping up on this, is that I think that the Hold Your Fire songs, I think all Rush pretty much translates well live, but
Mhm.
I think Hold Your Fire especially really, because it's so clean.
Mm.
It's I mentioned earlier how I was going to allude back. There's so many songs you could allude back to with this song. When I think of Time Stand Still, I think of a very like gentle, pleasant song to listen to. Just a very fresh, like, not intense, just very enjoyable, lighthearted song with some deeper meaning in the lyrics. And it takes me back to, when Neil, famously said in Spirit, when they famously sang, all this machinery making modern music can still be open-hearted. They carry that through with songs like this, and as much as they're, Neil even says in his quote, I'll pull it up real quick, he's not talking with this song about so much getting nostalgic or being upset about that time. He's just talking about, he's just playing for the present and just being more, what can you do now? And in the late 80s, a song like this was kind of a refreshing, breather from all the, heavier, constant, sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Or even the hustle and bustle of life, being
Yeah.
like you said, one day at a time, whichever version of that works for you.
Yeah. And we get our refreshing lyrics from our Quiet Observer. So
Nice.
Excellent.
Excellent. Well, my favorite version of the tune live would be the tour itself. I was there. I saw it 3 times, so I have special memories of that. And I'm actually akin to the Time Machine just because they brought it back and it felt different, and there was just such enthusiasm with the live performance. But I've seen other clips online of the song. I didn't get to see the tours, but being that I was at Hold Your Fire on that tour and seeing it, that's, I would say, my favorite version of the tune. So. And I guess on that note, no pun intended, excellent discussion. Thank you so much, everybody here. Thank you so much, Paul, for being here for the first time. You had plenty of fantastic insights, as everyone here has. And if you like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe, and also comment in the comment section, because we do read the comments. So please contribute anything you want to this video in terms of comments and your favorite live version. And we thank you so much for being here, and we will see you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye.